The GMTK Game Jam has come and gone, and as every year I always try to make a little bit of time to join in and make something fun. But this year I actually had a plan going in, because I wanted to try out doing something with level design. Usually in these kind of projects I focus a lot on writing the code to make whatever concepts I come up with, or me and my team comes up with, work, but this time I have been struggling with putting down good level design for a while, and a well-coded game is fun, but that doesn't really mean anything if the levels themselves are very boring. So I took it as my goal to do something that is not very code heavy and relied mostly on me putting together a level. Now the only worry I had was the theme needs to fit that goal for me.
GMTK Game Jam 2024 begins right now. Your goal over the next 4 days is to make a game that fits the following theme: built to scale.
Built to scale. The first thing that I'm thinking about is what we can do is something like having two different scales of like a map, right? So we have the small map, and then we have the big version of the map, and the player can go back and forth between the two of them. I imagine that this is the first thing that about 99% of people are going to think about, so we're going to workshop that idea a little bit here. It's kind of like in Super Mario 64, where you have like Little Big World. We have this like world here where if you go into one painting, you go into a scaled up version of the level, which allows you to reach other areas because you can now sneak between like little passages and stuff like that. And then the other one allows you to go to like a scaled down version of the level. I think this here is a pretty good indication of like the level itself. And being big allows you to very easily go to different sections because you can just jump over things that are massive. I'm thinking we can kind of make this like a puzzle game, right? So what we can do is we can have a certain something that we need to get in the small version of the level here, and then through a certain method we change into the big version of the level. So we go here, and having gotten this item, we can now do something in here, get something in there, and go back to the small version. Again, I feel like this is a little bit super obvious, but we're one step deeper in than just having like Little Big Island or Little Big whatever it was in Mario 64. Like what I'm thinking about right now is kind of a game built around the, well, this is a Minecraft version of the room, but like kind of built around the idea of the Bazaar Room in Kingdom Hearts 1's Wonderland, where it's not only scale, but sometimes you have this level like rotated 90 degrees so that you're walking on the walls and suddenly like you're platforming on things like these little things here, and you can hang off of this little like water tap. So I think that's what I'm going to end up doing, is we need to just have like 4, 5, 6 different versions of this room, some of which are at different scales, some of which are at like different rotations. Then we create some puzzle elements. Like that is, now we have something that deals with the idea of the theme, right? I actually quite like this. This is pushing things like 2 steps beyond just, okay, we have 2 maps at different sizes, because that is the most obvious thing ever, and I want to like get a little bit deeper than that. But at this point we've made like a connection to a specific other game that I like, and like a little bit of inspiration from a couple of other games maybe, but specifically like this game, this world, taking this idea. So we have those mechanics, but that by itself doesn't make a game. We need a goal for the game, and then we can work backward to how we're going to get to that goal. And I think the goal is going to be a sort of collectathon type of thing. So what we're going to do is find 3 objectives. And I think those 3 objectives should be this. And you might be thinking, hey, that is a cube. I don't mean the cube, I mean the gizmo. I think what we should do is we should try to find the 3 different gizmos that you have in Unreal Engine here, and in most 3D software. That is translation, rotation, and scale. Or maybe what we should do is we try to find just a one gizmo, we try to build that, and the three things that we need to find is the y-axis, the x-axis, and the z-axis. Okay, so first things first, I need a character. I need an environment, and from there we can start working on some extra inspiration. So character and environment are the two most important things. Alrighty, so I spent, I think, about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, like mocking up this little character here. Of course, he doesn't have any materials, but this is what we have. A little, like, toy robot thing with a incel-looking top hat. He doesn't have a mouth, because I couldn't be bothered modeling that. And everything, like, actually slots in together as if they are, like, toy parts. Alright, so we have the character. Which seems to have imported somewhat properly. The feet are way too small now that I look at it, but it's a little too late for that now. So we put in the chin, we put in the wrists, which that's going to be quite like a thing. The same with the elbows, it's going to be a little tricky. The knees, oh, actually expect the knees to kind of just work. And then the groin, I don't even know, like, with these body proportions. But we'll see if they can rig him up and maybe he won't look like absolute horseshit. That's actually not too bad. Like, obviously, it doesn't really move the way that a full plastic character would move. There's a little bit of bending going on here, but for the most part, like, I don't know how well the fingers are doing. I think the fingers are kind of messed up. Yeah, the fingers are really quite messed up, but that is probably something that we can fix, right? So what actually is going on with these fingers? So yeah, he actually doesn't seem to have fingers. In worst case scenario, I just get rid of the fingers altogether. After some more time of trying to figure out what was going on with the fingers and why the fingers weren't being individually mapped to any bones, I decided to, you know what? Yes, let's get rid of the fingers. I just gave him mitten hands. He's supposed to be a toy. It's fine. And I really wanted to get moving on to giving him some basic material so that I could start importing him into Unreal Engine and get to work on the things that actually matter for this game jam. I'll admit, it's a little Slenderman, but I think this actually is probably pretty good for just like a basic... I can always go back over this. It's pretty easy what I have set up here, right? I just have a couple of layers with different masks for different colors for a plastic material, for like a very beat up plastic material. And that's kind of everything there is to it. So at this point, like if I want to come in and say, actually I want to just add in like one more layer here for a different color, I can just like copy this over and I can just say for which part of the mesh I want that color. So let's say for this one and that one, right? So I want the body to be a different color. I can just come in there and we can just simply change the body color maybe to... So it's that easy to just come back in, re-export the texture, and we'll be good to go. So for now, I think our character is done. At this point it was getting pretty late at night, so I decided to just download a couple of Miximo animations and we put those in Engine in the morning. But there was a bit of an issue when I woke up and I opened up Unreal Engine, and that is that the Miximo skeleton has some problems when you're trying to get it to work in Unreal Engine due to how it deals with the root bone of the skeleton, which in general makes the animations look less than fantastic, but I also wanted to retarget that skeleton onto the Unreal Mannequin skeleton so that I could reuse marketplace animations and that kind of stuff. And that was an even bigger issue. So I spent pretty much the entire morning of the Saturday trying to figure out a way around this. I tried out a billion different things, and then eventually I ended up settling on just, alright, it'll look kinda bad. I need to get a move on. I can't be spending the entire day just trying to fix this altogether actually pretty minor but still very annoying little issue. So once that was decided, I downloaded some 3D models, some assets from the Unreal Marketplace, because I wasn't going to do all of the art myself. Again, I wanted to focus mostly on putting things together to make a level design. And I started building the outline of what would eventually become the main level of the game. It is time for a quick check-in. I have been using one of the pre-built houses as a template. I'm not using the house itself because, number one, I want to do my own stuff, obviously, but also because this is a blueprint, and changing things about a pre-existing blueprint with every mesh just being like a component is really annoying, so we're not going to do that. Instead, I've just been using it as a guide for like general proportions, and my version is like a little bit different. So let's just walk through it. I have like the outline shell for it right now. So this is just kind of like the bottom floor, and then we have a staircase here up to what's going to be the top floor. So now I just need to fill this entire thing with a bunch of content, and I need to start mapping out the like puzzle platforming elements to this. And that's most likely gonna be pretty much the most difficult thing to do here, because I don't think I'm very good at designing puzzle related stuff, so it's probably going to be more platforming than puzzle. Alright, so while my lunch is cooking away in the background, I started placing in a couple of props, some lighting, like this bookcase here or whatever it might be. And the actual goal here, this is going to like get the Z-axis in it, the X-axis in it, and the Y-axis in it. And I just started to think, okay, but how am I going to make these like happen? How are these going to make sense? How am I going to implement this with the idea of the game? And when you initially like approach this thing, I want to have like a little cutscene play where you just get a small little camera movement, maybe like one of them is here, and then just we have a camera movement doing a little bit something like this, a lot smoother than like hand controlled, of course. And we just show you all three of the locations. The Z-axis one here, you will get in a scenario where the entire building is Z-axis up, right? And this is going to be the different orientations of the house. So then the Y-axis is going to be in a version of the house where the Y-axis is the up axis. So that means that like this is going to be the roof, and this is going to be the floor. For the X-axis, of course, we'll make something where this is the roof, and then this will be the floor. It might be more interesting for that one to be the other way around, where this is the floor, so you can like jump off of here and up to here. But at this point, I need to start like mapping out some routes through the house so that I can put down props, so that all the different orientations of the house make sense. And then I also have to keep in mind that if people like miss certain jumps, that shouldn't soft lock them. So I'm a little curious as to how I'm going to do this. Alright, so we've added here on the top floor an extra little wall with a small gap in it, and you can see a little light that will entice you to go over in this direction. But in the normal sized version of the house, of course, you cannot slip between these. So I've made a instance of the house that is 3 times the size, and I'm gonna play from here. And this is just big enough for the player to be able to slip through them, and there we can make our way to where eventually our first or one of the 3 goals is going to be. But you might notice that the lighting here looks a little bit different from how it looked when we were over here. And that is because scaling up a level instance doesn't change the attenuation radius or the intensity of the lights. So the lights are still the same between the 2 of these. And that means that all of the lighting of all versions of the level are going to be either inconsistent or have to be done on a per instance basis outside of the instance level itself, which is not ideal, but that probably means that I have to do a lot of work today on the actual level design itself, and then tomorrow maybe I can revise some of this stuff and redo a lot of the lighting. The lighting is going to be one of those, if I have time to do it, I'm going to redo it to make it look better. Otherwise, there's just going to be some inconsistency. This is a game jam after all, that's just kind of what happens. While programming and writing code in general wasn't one of the main things that I was going to do in this game jam, of course, some basic systems still needed to be put in place. And with that also comes decisions on how I'm going to be building this different scale and different rotations version of this level. There's a handful of different ways to do that, making the level bigger or making the characters smaller, and how am I going to travel between those two different states. I just decided to make a simple level loading zone system that could teleport you around and then start experimenting to see what I would actually end up doing. Alright, so this is fairly basic, but this is just a collision box, and when you overlap with it, what it does is it has a reference to another loading zone, and it just gets the arrow from that loading zone so that I have a little bit more control over where the character is going to be spawning. Gets that world transformed so it has the location and the rotation, I guess also scale if I really wanted to. That would mean that I maybe don't necessarily need to use this scaled up version anymore. If I can also just like scale down my character, there's something to be said about that. We'll take a look into those options in a moment. And then it just places that at the arrow there, and then you can link both of them back together, back and forth. So right now, if I like walk into here, in theory it should teleport me, and it does not. I guess the arrow is just too close and it's causing an instant overlap again. So let's just move the arrow over a tiny little bit and try again. And now we are here. So that kind of just works perfectly, right? So now we are small, and now we are big. I do want to try though, because I do quite like the idea that instead of doing it this way, what we can do is we can just take this and make this entire thing a lot smaller instead. Like make this thing just like, what would that be, like 1/3-ish this size, and place that over there. Maybe that works a little bit better. So let's get my player start. Does that work better? Because that means that we only really need 3 instances of this thing, and they can all be the same scale, meaning that we can actually bake the lighting into the instances themselves, which would be preferable. So let's, I mean, that does seem to be working, right? So that's actually pretty cool. Yes. I do have to be careful though that I don't end up like touching any of the loading zones that I'm not supposed to be able to access in like the different sizes, but I do think that this might be a better way of doing it. My character movement when I get smaller, right? My character movement is still the same in world space, which makes it feel like I'm walking around very fast. But I don't know, I might actually like that, because the issue with the other way around, where I maintain my size but the world becomes a lot bigger, is that it feels like it takes forever to walk anywhere, and that's kind of like maybe interesting and fun to do, but we also have to keep in mind that we're making a game jam game, right? So people do want to like get a move on at some point. So I feel like this might not be like too bad. And now we can set the maximum walk speed to be our base move speed, multiplied here by the vector length of our scale. That's going to be our new walk speed. So now when we get made smaller, we'll also move slower. The one thing that I'm still iffy about is that it also doesn't change the like camera, and it also I don't know. There's actually quite a lot of downsides here. It doesn't change the camera, so it doesn't. On the one side, it does actually make me feel smaller, but it doesn't make the world feel bigger, if that makes any sense. And because of the character movement speed actually being slower, like we also play different animations in the blend space and all that kind of stuff. So I actually don't think I want to do that after all. A few hours have gone by, and I've effectively made what I think is a basic, alright obstacle course for the first little bit. Because keep in mind that you probably will need to like make your way up here, find this thing, then like become small, then go through here. I don't know, it feels like we're wasting a lot of space here. We might be able to do something with this. This might be space that I'm just going to like place decorative stuff in, nothing like actually mechanical. But for the most part, I think we have something going here. So this is the size that we're at in this larger version. And then we platform over all of these little like chairs and stuff that have just fallen rightly into place for us to be able to make it onto these shelves, and then through this one, and then onto this barrel. It is really quite simple. I did have to make sure that you can't sneak your way from down here onto the barrel, because that would be a little fucked, of course, but you can't. With the first bits of gameplay falling into their proper places, we also quickly run into another aspect of level design, and that is not just how does the player interact with the world, but how does the world stack up on its own? How does the world building and the potential like environmental storytelling do its thing? As an example, I had this little parkour thing, and initially that was just a little gap in the wall to something that looked like a bedroom, but nothing reasonably could even access this bedroom if somebody were to live in this house, which obviously isn't particularly good world design. It doesn't change anything for the gameplay experience, but from like an immersion perspective, that is something that we didn't want to do, of course. So instead, we'd rather replace that with a proper door that is maybe just ever so slightly open so that the big version still can't go through, but the small version can. But now it is more believable that somebody living in this house would just have this door and be able to open it and go into the bedroom. And this is something that I wanted to test out during this entire process. Can I make this house feel like it makes sense on a normal walkthrough when you're just normal size and you're running through, but also have all of these different props serve as obstacles in the different bigger versions? And that is actually a lot more tricky than I initially thought it was going to be. And again, kind of the whole thesis of what I was going for with this game jam. I wanted to challenge myself to do something like that. Like this way, we can enter this as being our small little selves. Hopefully, let's test that. Like we can enter and exit this through here. But when we're big, we're never going to be able to fit through this. So I think that is a little bit better. We're trying to design a level here. And part of designing a level is to make something that feels halfway reasonable. Like this chair having fallen over and allowing me to get up on these shelves is already a little sus, but just being a gap in the wall to a room that nobody else can enter is maybe not ideal. So I think that this is an improvement. It's been a few more hours, and in this part of the level we actually have something that looks like, hey, this might look like a game, right? So since we made this little room smaller, this is pretty much finished. It could use a couple more like props that are just decorative, but like this for the most part is finished. As far as like parkouring goes, all of the like actual gameplay elements, like the goal here, we need to implement still, of course. But I made the entirety of this room. Some of these are just like pre-existing like bundled assets, just like one blueprint. So if I go here, like this entire shelf is just one thing that's pre-made. No use in remaking all this from the ground up if it's just decorative, right? The same thing with like these. All of these are just like pre-existing blueprints. I scattered some buckets on the ground just to make things a little bit more busy. And we have a, what I think is obvious enough for players to get, route back up here. So what will end up happening is in the normal course of the gameplay, what we'll do, players will start in the normal size house here downstairs. Because again, they need to interact with this thing first to learn where they need to go and what the point of the game is. And then they can get these three in any order, but logically speaking, the easiest is going to be everything just being the right way up. And that's just a matter of going upstairs here. This pretty much already looks like something that you can climb up, right? You're not going to be like climbing this up on this size, but we also have this huge ass door here with some blackness. So when you go through this, you end up here. You don't have to parkour down that. You can just jump down and go into here and do your thing, get the thing that you need. But then, in order to become big again, in order to return that little collectible to its spot where it needs to be, that's where you come in and you need to start like platforming. I need to work on the gravity a little bit, but you start like platforming through all of these things, and then you can come up here. And I missed the one little bit of the jump that I thought was impossible to miss. Well, there you go. That's how games work, I suppose. I'm just doing this very carefully now. Again, it still looks a little bit awkward, and it is. And then finally, when you make it back up here, you can go through, and we are back in the normal-sized house. So now with this obstacle course kind of done, I think we're going to use the downstairs area for the other two. And then something terrible happened. The Saturday kind of ended with me putting a rough blockout down for the rest of the routing of the actual game, and then I woke up on Sunday and I started working a lot. So I started putting in the actual props, I started testing things out, I put in some post-processing because I thought that the game just generally looked kind of bland, so I went for some cell shading, I ended up adding some lights, and you might be thinking, why am I not seeing any of this footage? Like, you've recorded this, right? That's the entire point of this video, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't. I have no footage recorded through the entirety of the Sunday. I just started working, and at some point, I just kind of realized, hey, the sun is setting already, and I haven't recorded even a second of footage, and the game is kind of done. I had included some sound design, courtesy of a good friend of mine. I had done all the lighting in the different areas. There wasn't anything left to show. The game was ready for submission. About 90% of that footage would have been more of what we've just seen, me building these parkour courses. So you're not really missing out on too much, but what we're going to do instead is I'm going to just do a live run through of the finished level, and we're just going to enjoy going through that together. Alright, so here we are with the live playthrough, real quick. You can definitely already see that I've put down the lighting and the cell shading. Everything looks significantly different now. And this is the look of the final game. So you guys did miss out on quite a bit, but let's just get started and play through this. So when we start up, we can go and watch this cutscene over here, which shows you the locations of all three gizmos that you need to pick up. And you'll also note that there might be a little bit of audio. I might need to boost that in post a little bit, but it does like a little bit of audio going on, which makes things just look and feel a little bit more like alive and real. I suppose there's some kind of like spoiler warning that I should put here, because I'm going to be playing through the entire game, which is very, very short. If it weren't for the fact that I don't necessarily think that this is a very spoilable game, you still can't quite make your way through there, so that's nice. It's not a very spoilable game, and I don't even necessarily recommend you go out and play this, because it is literally just like everything that you're about to see here. So if you do want to play it, however, there will be a link down below in the description to the itch.io page. If you really cannot help yourself, there is a download there. Go ahead and play through it, have a little bit of fun. Do be aware that the first time you start it up, there might be a little bit of an issue with you falling through the world. If you just open up the game a second or third time, that generally fixes that. I wasn't aware of that issue until after I had submitted the game. So, and this is how we like make our way back up, right? So now we have our first little gizmo piece, and we can go back downstairs to get the other two. So we need to get back up to become big again, and then we can make our way downstairs. And it was actually a lot of fun, as you can see that now that we've picked up the first gizmo piece there, the blue, I was gonna say red, the blue gizmo handle on the actual piece down here is now solid, and the other ones you might be able to see are transparent. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it's a lot more like present, right? So that's actually something that you can see in the live feedback, and even in this map, all the way back there, there's the tilted version of it, and it still updates appropriately. It does it in all the versions of the map, even the ones where you can't see it. So I don't know why I did that. I also messed up the only puzzle-like element in the entire game. You need to move over this box in order for that jump to become possible. I think it might technically be possible without it, if you like really spam the jump button, but for the most part, like, this is the way you're supposed to do it. And then we can just go through here, make your way through these shelves into this little portal. Initially, in the footage you guys have seen, those portals were just black. But with the lighting being so dark in some places, before I had turned on the auto exposure again, just because auto exposure makes things so much easier, it was really difficult to see some of them. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up scrolling a couple of noise textures over each other and then getting like the max value between them. And that got this relatively interesting looking effect. Good enough for me right now, right? So we're on our way back, and this is actually something that I'm pretty happy with, because on your way back you're going to see, hey, I didn't even notice this door on my way through, because you're naturally just going to be walking through. Most people even just jump over this, which is entirely like a thing you can do. So on your way back, like, hey, new door. Didn't see that yet. And you can go through it, and then you end up in this section, which is like we were over on that wall a moment ago. And now we're over on the other wall. Again, it's the X up and the Y up versions of the level. And this is actually remarkably simple. You just move through a little bit. You go up to the bedroom wall here for a moment, just to give a little bit more happening, really, is what is going on there. And then we go through this little portal here, ends up back on this wall. It is technically possible, like it looks like it's technically possible to just jump over these, because that over there is the portal that we just went through. I just put an invisible wall there because fuck you, that's why. And we can pick up the last gizmo. And that's how you've collected them all. Return to the start. So that is what we're going to do now. There's nothing that much going on. I'm just going to tell you thank you for playing. And you can close the game now. But let's go back anyway, just to show you the full playthrough. So yeah, again, it looks like you might be able to like jump over this, but I just put some invisible walls here because I just didn't want to deal with putting any like actual objects there, because they're going to be sticking out quite a lot, and that's going to look weird in the context of just like the normal right way up level. So we don't want to have that happen. Now we're back here, and we can just jump around. There's a couple of places where you can jump yourself into a soft lock still. As it turns out, after I uploaded it to itch.io, people found out that there very much still is room for that. So now, thanks for playing. Left click to close the game, and then we can just left click, and that doesn't... it only works when you're standing next to it. Okay, that's not exactly what I intended that to be like, but sure, that's fine. That's the entirety of the game. So yeah, there's a couple of things that we missed out on, namely that being me making like this particle system over here, which is quite fun, and the material for the cauldron itself, I suppose, is interesting. There's a little bit of like audio attenuation with these cauldrons as well. When you're close to them, you can hear like the bubbling sound. There's just a bunch more art that is being placed down, but it's just kind of more of the same. And then we have, like, we added this clock, which is, I didn't make this model myself, I got that from a friend, with some sound, and there's just general like background noise that's being added to create a little bit more atmosphere. It does that fairly well. And I think altogether it does make for, if nothing else, visually, I think this is a fun, nice looking game. And if you're going to download this just to run through it and look at stuff, like, I didn't make almost any of the art. Like, the only art asset that I made is the sprite for these particles. That's literally the only thing that I made as far as like art goes. Everything else is either made by someone else or just a marketplace asset. And if you just want to walk through, oh, and I suppose this material as well. If you just want to walk through and just have a look around and experience it, you can download it. Again, everything you've just seen is the entire gameplay experience. There's next to no gameplay here. And that is a little bit due to the fact that I tried to make a level design based challenge for myself in a game that doesn't have mechanics, which maybe also wasn't the best way to challenge myself, or maybe it was a fantastic way to challenge myself. It's a little bit of both, maybe. Anyway, for now, that's been this video, and thanks for watching. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page. A huge thank you to my Cave Student tier supporters, Earl Monseval Erno, and my Cave Digger tier supporters, Sir J. Thomas,